So the paints you'll need, I'm using Hippie Crafter. This is titanium white, burnt umber, raw umber, Mars black, burnt sienna, mid yellow, yellow ochre, lemon yellow, and orange yellow. And really, just a spectrum of yellows and a spectrum of browns. That's the key to this painting. So I used a wash brush. I think this is a 2-inch just for the background, the underpainting layer. I used a fan brush for some of the leaves. This is a 1/4-inch brush with the bristles cut in half, and I dabbed that to create some leaf impressions. This is a filbert brush in the center there, the dark one with the rounded edges. That's good for tree trunks and blending. The nubby scrumbler brush with the red handle, that'll break up edges and blend, and a little 2-inch round, or a little number 2 round, a tiny detail point, and then a liner brush for the twigs and branches and leaves and things. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you exactly what colors were used for what areas of the painting here. So I went ahead and put a dab of every color used, and then I'm going to show you the blends right now. So for the outer edges here, these are all black. Maybe a little bit of dark brown, but pretty much a 50-50 black and raw umber. So the deer's body, the underpainting, was a mid-brown, maybe a little bit of the umber mixed in, but a 50-50 raw umber and burnt umber. And then on top of that, I added some of the burnt umber, some yellows, some white. You can see that for the mid-tone, mid-hair color. And then I brought a lot of this orange background, which is pretty much ochres, yellows, and whites, into the body of the deer. So pretty much this ochre and some yellows, some white. This is the highlighted areas on the deer. And then the very top, these outlines are going to be yellows and white. So pretty much just this bright yellow and white. That yellow and white, lemon yellow and titanium white, that mixture is going to be this super highlighted glow area, as well as the borders of the deer. And that's going to give you the glow. Now, when you work from the glow outwards, you want your tree branches to get darker and darker and darker. So starting out, you'll have your glow color, and then these branches right around the glow color are pretty much, maybe a touch of orange, but it's going to be pretty much this, because it's just a bit darker, and then that's right around it. And then for the tree trunks going through that brighter area, you can add a little bit of ochre in there and a little bit of brown and black, and get that light orange gray. And that will be the color for your innermost tree trunks. And then once you get that base color for your tree trunks, you can just start adding browns and blacks as you get further out. So these will be your mid trunks. And then you can add a little bit of the black and the umber. And these will be your dark branches and trunks out here. And then finally, when you get to the border, you're going to use pure black. So your tree trunks are going to go light to dark as you get further out towards the border. And then every once in a while, you can throw in a dark tree because that gives you depth. So the lighter trees will be further in the distance, the darker trees will be closer. So the foreground will be close and dark, and the background will be light. But in general, you want that bright point as you work out to get darker, just a slow and throughout the entire painting. So this is just a tiny little touch of pale green. Forgot to mention it before, but a tiny little dab of pale green, that's what that moss is. These tree trunk highlights, those are just this middle orange, yellow, brown. This yellow ochre, yellow, brown, whites, this is just a bunch of different oranges and whites and ochres and yellows and a touch of brown mixed in. You know, it's hard to show you exactly what I did because I used a bunch of different variations within that ochre, yellow, orange, umber spectrum. And you can do the same thing. You just want to use a soft orange glow to give that twilight. And, you know, like I said, it's hard to show you exact colors, but I'm getting as close as I can. And you'll see as throughout the tutorial. But for these autumn twilight leaves, that's just some orange and ochre. Orange and ochre and some white. You can add a little bit of that lemon yellow if you want. You know, I used a bunch of different variations throughout the painting, and you don't have to be exactly spot on with this. I'm just giving you a general basis and showing you, you know, how I mixed up most of these colors. And then for the fireflies, you know, these are just mid yellow and white. And then I did some that are pure white. And then I did some that are orange and white. So these subtle tree limbs and twigs and leaves, that's mostly what we use for our tree trunks, which is this color that we mixed up earlier, which was some ochre, some orange, some yellow, and then some of the umbers, just to get, you know, where it has an orange glow, but it also has a little bit of gray and dark to it. That's the same color I used for these twigs. And then as I got closer and these bigger trees coming out, that's pretty much a 50-50 black and raw umber. So that's the black and umber for those foreground tree branches. And then these background and midground trees are just a spectrum of you know, ochre, some mid yellow, just different yellows. You can add a touch of white, and then from there we can add in some browns. You know, it's hard to go wrong. All you want to do is just take that nice bright orange, ochre, yellow glow and get a little darker with it. And then like that'll be perfect for these tree trunks, you know. And then as you get further out, like we said, you can add a bit more brown in there, a bit more umber, and work that out. But that's pretty much it. You know, those are the colors I use. That's kind of the general color mixing scheme and theory, color theory behind this one. So let's get into it, and then you can see these all put to work. But you know, that's a start, and that covers pretty much everything that I mixed up. All right, so the first thing is I did a underpainting, and this is just a little bit of the lighter umber. You can use, I'm not going to specify because you can use any that you want, but I used one of the lighter umbers mixed with the yellow ochre. And this is just watered down in that 2-inch wash brush, and I'm just slopping it on. It's just a thin, watered down 50-50 umber, yellow ochre, just that light brown, yellow glow underpainting. So I put it on there with a moist bristled brush, and then now I'm just rubbing it with a paper towel. Because it doesn't matter, you know, all the variations, if it looks sloppy, it doesn't matter at all. It's just an underpainting, and it's just a thin layer to give a little bit of overall warmth and overall color to the painting. So I thought for this it'd be nice to have that little umber ochre underpainting, but you can be sloppy and messy with it. You can be quick, like I just showed you. So don't overthink it. Just get a little layer of warmth under there, and then you'll be good to go. So I'm going to start with the deer's body first, and I sketched in a couple of the main trees and the basic outline of the deer. You know, you don't have to be perfectly exact. I just wanted to get the basic proportions and dimensions in. So take your time with that, sketch it in if you want, and just get everything mapped out dimension-wise, and make sure that you know, the basics look okay. And then I'm just going to block in the deer outline with that dark umber that I showed you that we mixed up, and this is that base coat, and you know, I'll put that in, block in the deer, and then we'll let that dry, and then we'll add some lighter layers on top. If you're having a lot of trouble sketching this deer, or if you just, you know, you're just starting out and you struggle with drawing a little bit, you know, you can try to trace something. You can, you know, print something out and trace it if you need to. So whatever you need to do is fine. But yeah, we're gonna block in this deer first, and then we'll start adding our layers and start working in the rest of the scene. So now I have the filbert brush. The bristles are moist. It's not soaking wet. It's not dry. It's just moist bristles, so it flows well, but it's not too thin. And I'm going to use a little darker than I used for blocking in the deer. You know, with the deer we used one of the dark umbers. I forget exactly what we mixed up, but you can go back to the beginning and look at all the color mixing if you want to get the exact match. But it's just a dark brown for the deer base color, and then we're going to use a dark brown, probably a raw umber if I remember right, and black 50-50. And that raw umber and black 50-50, that's what I'm using now, and I'm just going to use it on these main big trees, and we're going to border and frame the painting using this. So I'm using a filbert brush with moist bristles. I'm using that 50-50 dark umber and black, and you know, you can just see my brush strokes here and look at what I block in and go ahead and replicate this. So I'm pretty much just going to frame and blend out the bottom, and then I'm going to frame the sides with those trees, and then we'll go ahead and have our foreground shadows built, and then we'll start working back. Sorry I had to pick it up here because that lip, just wanted to make sure that I got it covered down to the border. I'm just going to bring up just a little bit of that color while I'm mapping out all of our shaded dark areas. I'm going to bring some up to the legs because we're going to have that center light in the background, so it's going to be casting a shadow from those legs. So that's what that was. I'm just pulling in a little bit of that color up into the legs there and just have them meet at a point, and then that'll set the ground, and then that'll cast those shadows for you. And then I'm going to blend out this bottom portion and make it nice and soft. Okay, so now that we have the basic shaded area mapped out, I'm just getting a smaller brush here. This is one of those small rounds. And we can start to add in that glow. You know, that nice central bright glow, and then we can build from there. So this is that lemon yellow, that bright yellow with a little bit of white. You know, we can mix in a little bit of oranges, some umbers, some mid yellows as we work outward, but this super central point right behind the deer's head, right down the middle there, that setting twilight sun, that's going to give us the backlighting. We want that to pop, so that's going to be white and bright yellow. And then we can blend that out, and like I said, we'll get darker as we get further away from that central point. So here I have the filbert, and I have some of that mid-orange yellow that I was talking about that's going to be the central color scheme for the entire painting. And I'm going to go ahead and go around those traced out trees I have. So like I said, I traced out a few of the main trees, and now that we have our shaded areas blocked in, our main trees blocked in, our deer blocked in, we have our central lighting mapped out. Now I'm going to go in and start working these trees, and I'm going to get our base orange yellow glow to the painting. So here I'm working in between those mapped out trees with a filbert brush, moist bristles. I have some ochre, some yellow ochre, some mid yellow, a little bit of orange, and I'm just getting a nice soft yellow orangey glow. And I'm going to use that filbert brush, and I'm going to work it in these vertical strips in between the trees, and I'm going to blend those out. And then I'm going to start to build that nice twilight autumn sunset glow that makes this painting so so bright and warm. So that's what we're doing here. So this painting, as it goes, I'll cover up and reblend and add and we'll tweak and change, and it's like any painting. So if you see me go back in here and just reinforce and rebuild and make sure we don't lose that glow, that's all I'm doing here. Is I just, you don't want to lose that central glow. So as things go around, sometimes I'll skip around and bounce around, um, just to make sure I don't forget things, or um, something like that. So, but right here, I'm just adding that, I'm reinforcing that central glow, and I'm just bringing it up vertically and blending things out. Now using a small round brush, I think it's a number 2, I'm going ahead and dropping in some of those distant tree trunks that we talked about. So this is that basic orange, ochre, yellow glow color that permeates throughout the whole painting, but we added a little bit of brown in there. So a little bit of umber mixed in, just to get a little gray, dark touch to it. So it's almost a brown, gray, orange, like a warm gray with an orangish yellow base that'll match everything. So we just darkened up that background orange, yellow, ochre, and that's all this tree color is. So I showed you that a couple times, I think, in the beginning with our color mixing, and that's all I'm going to do. So we're going to use that base orange color that's throughout the whole painting, gray it out a little bit with a little bit of dark brown, and then we're going to use that for our tree trunks. At least the distant ones, because we want those distant tree trunks to be very light, and then as they get further and closer and nearer to the edges, then they'll get thicker and darker. See, now I added a little bit more of that dark umber and darkened those trees up a little bit as we're getting further away from that central lighting point. So that's all I'm doing here. Same brush, moist bristles, using that background color and just adding some dark umbers, adding more and more dark umber as I get further away from that central warm point and towards the edges, and just dropping in these tree trunks. Now as I'm getting near the edges, this is pretty much that 50-50 dark umber black color that's used in the border. Maybe a little bit more brown. And then I'm going to use that lighter tree trunk color and actually fill in between those trees and then blend it out. We just, we just want the whole painting to go from light to dark as you go from center to edge. So the actual background glow will get a little darker, the tree trunks will get a little darker, so just apply that concept to everything and it'll help. So now I'm using the same little round brush, moist bristles, and I'm going to drop in some more orange. I felt like it. I think it needed some more orange. Just wanted to give it a warmer autumn twilight glow. I think if it was just too much yellow and ochre, the yellow would be overwhelming. So if we have it from some yellows and some oranges, it just gives it more natural glow. So in between some of those tree trunks, I'm just dropping in that same background color but with a bit more orange mixed in. You can see it's starting to warm up and we're starting to get that light to dark, and we're starting to get some trees, and it's coming to life a little bit. So I'm just going in with the filbert brush and I'm going to beef up some of those shadows in the foreground and just add a second layer and just try to blend it out the best you can. And so here, just try to match those distant light tree trunk colors that we used whenever you add the limbs and twigs and foliage. So here I'm just dropping in some branches and some leaves and that silhouette. But I'm just trying to match those light tree trunk colors, which is our orange, yellow, ochre base color with a little bit of dark umber mixed in to gray it out a bit. So that's all that is. But now we're getting to the point where everything's kind of mapped out. We have good color in it. It has that warm glow. Everything's framed. We have our distance, our depth dropped in. We have our nice sunset twilight glow in the background there. Those main foreground trees are blocked in. We have good blending and good framing with that foreground shadows. And then now we're adding some distant light twigs and details. And then we'll just start to build up our layers. You can just start to drop, if you just look at it and use your imagination here, and if you think there needs to be another tree, then add another tree. If you think a tree needs to be erased, then you can go ahead and cover it up with that background color, or make some tweaks here, because this is pretty much our base, and then now we can start to work into the details and start to add layers. So go ahead and take your time with this and make sure that your base is solid here. So make sure your trees are good, make sure your blends are good, make sure your basic colors are what you want them to be. Make sure you have that nice bright yellow white glow spot. Make sure you have that, uh, that you haven't lost that along the way, and then you'll be good to go for the next few layers in the next round, next phase. So at this point you can start to add some little twigs and some more details. And I'm just using this same light tree colors. And I'm just going to try to match that, match your branch to your trunk, and just try to keep those distant trees skinny and light, and the foreground trees, you know, darker and bigger, and then you'd be good to go. So here I'm going to add a little bit of orange and light umber just to define that main trunk, because the interior of that big main tree on the left is going to have some highlights, because that glow is going to touch it. So here I just added some vertical strips with the small liner brush of just that background color, really. There's some orange and some yellow and some umber. And then I went ahead and blended it out a little bit. But yeah, we're getting there now. Just make sure all your blends are good. That's all I'm doing here, is just getting things ready for the next detailed layer. Alright, I think this is a perfect place to stop for part one, and then we'll continue part two, and that'll be our layers and detailing. Because our background, our base colors look good, our shapes look good, everything looks really good here for our base layer. And then now we're ready for details. So let's do that part two. Because as these videos get near an hour, it's just hard to handle and upload and download and edit and do all that stuff. And I think YouTube likes them better when they're around 30-40 minutes too. So let's do that. We'll break this up. I'll have part two in the description, in the comments, and then I'll also have it pop up at the end screen here, so you can just click that button and go right to part two. So let's wrap it up here. Part two will be all the details and finishing. So I'll see you there, and we'll finish it up. Thanks for watching. See you then.